The following episode contains discussions of abuse in both the song's lyrics and also the discussion of it, so just, listen at your own discretion. It is the 4th of May, 2024. My name is Pigeon Rose. This is my song of the day. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pigeon's Song of the Day. I'm Pigeon, of course, and today we're talking about quite a sad one, as you can probably guess from the trigger warning I put at the start of this episode. This song that I'm going to talk about today, and the album that it's from, are very, they're emotionally fraught, and I have a personal association with them that is also obviously quite emotionally charged. So in talking about that, just so you know before we get into it, that this subject matter, whenever I talk about songs in this album, because I'm probably going to do an episode for like every song in this album at some point, it'll get serious. So, it's not going to be like the Rainbow Connection episode or something. But what we're talking about specifically is album Hospice by The Antlers, which is sort of a concept album about a hospice worker who falls in love with a terminal cancer patient and the abusive relationship they have until she eventually dies of the cancer. And just from that description alone, you can tell this is intense, specifically because, again, it is the first week of this show. I'm talking about the opening. And the opening track of this album is just an instrumental called Prologue, and then the first song with lyrics is Kettering. And I want to talk about both, but mostly Kettering, because that's the one with lyrics, obviously. There's not much to say about Prologue as a song, but there is some stuff to say about its place on the album and what could have been there. But that'll make sense when we actually get to the discussion. So for now, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the Since I Left You discussion. You can follow the link in the description for the album, and you can just listen to Kettering if you only want to listen to Kettering, or you can listen to the Prologue beforehand as well if you want to. I don't think it's very long, so you can listen to both if you want the full thing. But there's not much actually in the Prologue track. It's just I will have stuff to say about its place in the album. So anyway, with that, let's go listen to the song and come back to discuss it. I usually come back into the main part of the episode with a yeah or a woo. It doesn't seem particularly fitting for this one. That's the Prologue and Kettering from this album. It gets right away into the concept, really, with the lyrics, but also even at the start of the Prologue, the first thing you hear in the album is labored breathing on a machine. That really sets up. You already know the album's called Hospice, and then you hear, and it's just it feels that like clinical and cold, but also because of the lo-fi feeling of it and the production of it, it also feels very human, very intimate. I'll talk about Kettering before I go back to Prologue, actually. Like I said, the album is about a hospice worker and a terminal patient and the kind of abusive relationship that they develop. And the album is told in past tense, like this happened already. This is me thinking about it again. And so the first song is Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda. It's I wish that I had known in that first minute we met the unpayable debt that I owed you. Because you'd been abused by the bone that refused you and you hired me to make up for that. So it's like, you contracted cancer. Your bones suck at being bones. And now you've hired me to help you with that. And, you owe me this debt because I helped you. And he's saying that I owe you a debt as well. Walking in that room and you had tubes in your arms, the singing morphine alarms out of tune. Kept you sleeping uneven, and I didn't believe them when they called you a hurricane thunderclap. That's the first line that really gives you pause, I think. For one thing, it doesn't rhyme. But walking in that room and you had tubes in your arms immediately is like dehumanizing. It's kind of distancing, othering, You had tubes in your arms. Immediately it's medical. It's a horrific image, Those singing morphine alarms out of tune. Oof. I think a lot of the lyrics in this album do this, where they kind of blend the beautiful and the horrific, Singing is a wonderful way to describe the beep of the morphine drip, but they're out of tune. And then it says, kept you sleeping and even, and I didn't believe them when they called you a hurricane thunderclap. I had to look this up. You know what a hurricane thunderclap is? Because I sure fucking didn't. I don't know if it's a regional dialect, so maybe it's just an American thing, but a hurricane thunderclap, according to Google, is a person who lives an intense and beautifully meaning-filled life, but dies in an unexpected and profound way. It's better to burn out than fade away. A hurricane thunderclap, they cause this big stir, and then they're gone, right? And he's saying how, like, the other people who worked there knew that would be true of her. She has this, like, there's something about her that is big. like a hurricane, but she's going to be gone because of the cancer. And he says, I didn't believe them when they called you a hurricane thunderclap. Like, I didn't listen to them, and I should have listened to them. That's what the tone of this song is. I should have listened. I should have listened. When I was checking vitals, I suggested a smile. You didn't talk for a while. You were freezing. You said you hated my tone. It made you feel so alone, and so you told me I ought to be leaving. So right away, she herself is like trying to push him away because presumably because she's dying and she doesn't feel like she deserves this attention. But something kept me standing by that hospital bed. I should have quit, but instead I took care of you. You made me sleep and uneven, and I didn't believe them when they told me that there was no saving you. Oh boy. Hero syndrome, the thing of seeing someone who is dying and thinking, literally thinking I can fix her. It's such a unfortunately relatable topic, that idea of wanting to stay in a relationship that isn't working. Because Peter Silberman, the vocalist of this group and the songwriter, has kind of not said how much of this is autobiographical, but I kind of choose to read it because of how I can relate a lot of the topics and the lyrics to my own life. I choose to read it as being metaphorical, right? There isn't a literal hospice worker, there isn't a literal cancer patient. It's just an album about abusive relationships, and I can certainly ascribe a lot of lyrics to my own experience with abusive relationships. And so that thing of not wanting to give up, not wanting to quit because you think you can affect some change is a particularly poignant part, because you get like that when you're being abused. You think, oh, they're just having a bad day. It's worth the good days, or like this can be better, and it so often can't, unfortunately. And for this guy, it's like she's literally dying, but I have to believe that there's hope in saving you. And spoilers for the album, there ain't, and it gets so much worse from there. This album does this a lot. They repeat the thing. In the first one, it's, the singing morphine alarms kept you sleeping and even, and I didn't believe them. Sleeping and even is interesting. Presumably it means like calm, like, you're sleeping, you're calm, you're even, you're balanced out. And then you made me sleep and uneven, draining him of his energy and making him off kilter, feel off balance, because that's what abuse does. And that's just the first half of the song, and the rest of it is just that kind of piano and ethereal noise and sound, and I don't have much to say about it because it just sounds how it does, but I love it so much. It gets me, it doesn't get me going in the way that like The View from the Afternoon does yesterday, but just like it's such a powerful sound, and I love listening to this album full volume with headphones and just kind of sinking into the sound of it and the production of it. I won't say too much more about the album's concept and where the story goes, because I will definitely talk about other songs on the album. But this one is a great kind of mission statement for the album of this is what it's about, and this is the relationship, and this is how it is, and strap the fuck in, because it's going to get difficult. I'm going to go back and talk about Prologue, though, because Prologue is instrumental, but in the lyrics booklet, there's like a whole thing written there as if there were actually lyrics for it. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why is that there? So I Googled it. I discovered this album through YouTube, by the way, but I found this when I actually got the album on CD. I now own it on vinyl as well. And I saw those lyrics and I was like, what the fuck is this? So I Googled them. And before the album, they released an EP called New York Hospitals, which has 2 covers on it and a song called Sylvia, an Introduction. Throughout the album, they use Sylvia Plath as an image to represent the woman in the relationship. She's referred to as Sylvia many times. And the lyrics that are in the prologue section of the lyrics booklet of the CD are actually from Sylvia, an Introduction, from the EP. Slightly changed, slightly different. And that song has the same tune as Bear and Sylvia, 2 of the songs from the album. So it's an interesting sort of prologue in and of itself. One assumes that they meant to put that on the album, but then decided to just go with the instrumental for whatever reason, maybe because they thought it was too on the nose or something, or they were overdoing it with the Sylvia thing. But it's interesting because the lyrics of it get referred to in Epilogue at the end of the album. So I feel like it must have been part of the album pretty late into writing it. I'm not going to talk too much about what those lyrics are, but if you want, go look it up. It's a good song in and of itself, but it'll make more sense if you've listened to the album. I think Genius, for whatever reason, lists the lyrics of the song as if it's a bonus track, which I think would make sense, but I think you would just replace Prologue with it, I guess. Yeah, so I'll talk about the lyrics of it when I eventually talk about Epilogue, because I will definitely talk about Epilogue. So I suppose what else I have to say is that how I discovered this, because I like to talk about that. Because again, it's a funny, very me way. When I was repeating my leaving cert, I had like a smartphone it was early days of me having a smartphone and like being able to connect to the internet in school. So I would just look up music all the time and listen to it on YouTube. This is incidentally how I discovered Welcome to Night Vale. It's when I started listening to it. And also I came across a playlist that was just a bunch of different random songs that this person liked. And the song, I remember 4 songs were on it. Afraid by The Neighborhood, I think. Infrared by Placebo. Oh, what song was it? I don't remember what song it was. There was a song by the Magnetic Fields from 69 Love Songs. It might have been Fido, Your Leash is Too Long. I don't remember. It was some song from that album. And 2 by The Antlers from this album. And that song, again, obviously very depressing lyrics, but musically it's more of a kind of a pop song, more kind of melodic. So I didn't know what I was in for when I went back and listened to the album, you know? So that's how I discovered that. Apart from that, I don't have much more to say about this specific song until I'm talking about the rest of the album, I guess. Yeah, I heartily recommend the rest of the album, of course. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Break it down. Yeah.